Terry Colath with Professor Adrian Kerr. We're talking about the history of England, the 5-session course we're doing in the Fall Academy. And now we have come up to session 2. Thanks for joining me, Adrian.
It's a pleasure, Terry. Great to be back at Shell Point.
Yes, and this is the stuff of legends, session 2, right?
Yes, it's the beginning of what we now know as England. But of course, it had a rather patchy start. Where we left the subject last session was that Rome had taken over England and up as far as the Scottish border with Hadrian's Wall. Boadicea had come and gone, and it was established colony of Rome. But of course, Rome had overextended in the 5th century AD, and so it's fighting wars against the Persians in the southeast. It was fighting wars against the people across the Danube, the Germans and elsewhere, and they were under intense pressure, and the empire was collapsing. So Rome pulled back its troops from the outer colonies to protect the main city of Rome and Constantinople. And doing so, they emptied out all the soldiers from England. And we know exactly when they left because my hometown is Chester, which was the second largest Roman base in England. And we saw that they didn't have any more coins minted in Chester after about 410 or so. And so that showed us that the Roman civilization was moving backwards, and without soldiers and without tax collectors and roads and such, it began to implode. When Rome finally fell, it meant that the whole of the European Roman Empire was open season. And so we see some very militaristic, aggressive tribes coming in from northern Germany. We call them the Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes, coming from northern Germany and Denmark. And they saw England as a great opportunity. By then it had established quite a lot of wealth, high population. It was Christianized, so they had wealthy churches. And so it was a good place to pillage. And they came over in droves. And these are the Anglo-Saxons, we call them. And it's the beginning of the formation of England as a unitary government. And they established themselves in the southeast of England, and their names gave the names of the counties of England today. So we have Sussex, means it's southern folk, and then Wessex is again the same name, all referring to the Angles and Saxons. And their names of Northumberland all the way down to London, those counties are based on the Angles and Saxons who came over and settled. Of course, the people in the West were further away from this invasion, and they put up a good fight. And that brings us on to a very famous character indeed, called the person who burnt the cakes. And he became a national hero because he had lost many, many battles against the Danes, as he called. And then one day he came across a lady in a house, and he had no more army, and his country had collapsed. The Angles and Saxons were taking over. And he sat by her fire to recover, and she asked him famously, "Could you look after my cakes while I go and look after the animals?" And he fell asleep and the cakes burnt. And he was beaten over the head by this lady's broomstick, and that was the point at which he said, "I'm going to fight back." And from then onwards, his crumbling empire then grew and grew. He developed a navy, and then he took the battle to the Angles and Saxons and eventually unified England.
Goodness, quite a story. That's amazing.
And then we can talk, after King Alfred, we can talk also about the next people who had eyes on England, which of course were the Vikings, and that was a period of 150 years of raiding and pillaging and very difficult times. But the Vikings, of course, they didn't just focus on England. They settled in Dublin. Dublin is a Viking city. They went to Iceland, they went to Greenland, and into North America, and also into the Mediterranean. So the Vikings for 150 to 200 years were a very dominant seafaring, marauding group of people. But they did settle, and they settled in Jorvik, they called it. And so the Vikings were the next group of people who came over to England to dominate. The follow-on from the Vikings was a place called Normandy, in that Normandy is named after the Norman people, or the Norse people, which really calls the Vikings the Norse people, people from the north. They settled Normandy, and there are a number of claimants to the throne of England after the king had died without a male heir. So in 1066, that famous day, there were 4 people all claiming to be claiming the crown of England. And we'll finish off with a story of who those four were and who eventually won and became the new King of England. And that was the last time that England was ever conquered, and that was 1066.
Fascinating. All right, so that's session 2 with Professor Adrian Kerr. Hope you can make it to prepare for the following week, which will be session 3. See you at session 2.